One of the things that you'll often hear about smartphone photography from its detractors is that you can't take pictures with lots of depth of field. Depth of field being having a subject and everything behind that subject or everything in front of that subject falling nicely out of focus. Depth of field is a really useful tool to be able to understand, because what it lets you do is direct your audience to exactly what you want them to see in the image. You can use depth of field with smartphone photography, though you just need to know what you're looking for. So this landscape frame that I'm framing up through these trees here actually has loads of depth of field, because the horizon is hundreds of meters away up the hill, and this tree, this lovely bark here with all of its texture and detail on it, is a couple of centimeters away from the lens of the camera. What that means is that I can produce some interesting effects with depth of field just by tapping on different parts of the image. So here the focus is thrown all the way over to the horizon, and with a tap I can bring the focus back to the tree, get that detail in really sharp relief. The other lovely thing that we've got going on late here in the afternoon is the sun is just kind of peeking around the side of the tree. And so if we move our camera slightly from side to side, what we're able to do, you're going to catch that sun just clipping the edges of the tree, and that's what's going to give you that interesting lens flare, those interesting kind of light artifacts. The other thing that I'm going to do is throw in a bit of chaos. What I have here is a pair of sunglasses stolen from my son. Sorry, buddy. What we're going to do with these is we're going to just pop them over the lens of the camera there, and that's going to introduce some really chaotic flares to my scene, an almost kind of analog, kind of messed up film feel, I think, as the light just is treated really randomly through this kind of scratched up, banged up piece of plastic. But I think that those are going to look pretty cool. This frame has loads of depth of field to it, which is exactly what I was looking for when I started shooting. You can see that there's no definition at all on this tree in the foreground, which is acting as my natural frame, if you like, and then there's sharpness all the way to the horizon here and these trees at the very background. So there's a bit to like. There's also quite a bit that I'm not as fond of. I do like that the sun has picked out with a bit of golden colour the branches of these trees on the foreground. I don't like that the sun is so near to all of these clouds over the top. They've totally overexposed them. I'm also not huge on how I've got sharpness in my grass beginning right here at the beginning of the frame and then running all the way to the back. It makes it a little bit indistinct. It's a bit sort of clumsy in terms of how it's focused. So I think this is the reason that I carry on shooting, and I take lots of images when I find something that I think has promise, because you'll typically find something decent a bit further down the line. This frame has everything in it that I was looking for when I started shooting. Loads of depth of field. You can see we've got lots of sharpness and definition on this tree trunk at the very front of the frame, and then lots of kind of nice soft focus fall off through the rest of the image, and this nice very bright green stripe up the rest of the frame. I really like the composition. I like that there's just a little bit of gold across the bottom of that sky just there, which is just the sun in this late afternoon beginning to drop down towards the horizon. It's quite a nice composition. It's not quite as abstract as I'd like. I think it's a really decent looking frame. Nice and clean, nice and sharp, good light, tick in the box. This frame, shot through a cheap pair of child sunglasses, is actually my favourite of the bunch. What we've got here is total chaos throughout. We've got the light coming through this gap in the trees, hitting this cheap piece of plastic in front of the camera lens and scattering all over the place. It's a really random lens flare, and I can see just in here, in this corner, there's actually a bit of gold and a bit of colour, and I really like the texture of the tree. I also like how the sharpness in the camera varies depending on where you look in the frame. So we've got quite a bit of sharpness here, and then up towards the corners, because of that extra lens we've put on, it begins to fall off all over again, and I think it just has this nice kind of analog lo-fi quality to it.